We're here on the traditional territories of the Mississauga of the Credits, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. We are going to get to the reason that we planned yesterday and the day before to be here. But before I do that, I first want to say that I have been losing sleep, as I think a lot of people in Canada have been, over the situation in Afghanistan. We are extremely concerned about it and preoccupied by it as a party. We have been thinking about what can be done as a party. And we are, after having thought about it and discussed it and consulted with constitutional experts, we are today calling for an emergency recall of Parliament in order to have an emergency debate on the emerging situation in Afghanistan and what Canada's response to it will be. Now, our engagement in Afghanistan began 20 years ago after the events of September 11th, 2001. Since that time, Canada has engaged in one of its most significant military operations. It has included over 40,000 military personnel. It has cost the lives of at least 159 soldiers directly in Afghanistan, and it wounded thousands more, not just in Afghanistan, but since that time as well here in Canada, and many military personnel continue to suffer the impacts of their involvement in that war. We know that we went into Afghanistan because we wanted to ensure that Afghanistan did not become a base of operations that could be used to launch terrorist attacks. We know that we wanted to help the people of Afghanistan towards democracy and to protect women and girls in particular, who had been suffering for many years under the oppression of the Taliban regime and their draconian laws that prevented them from going to school, leaving the house, and having jobs. And we had many Afghans help us while we were there. So the question now becomes, what do we do? What are our responsibilities to the women and girls who are left behind, the 14 million women and girls, to the Afghan helpers who we told we would make sure were protected, who we said we would make sure were safe? What do we do to ensure that that Afghanistan and the future of Afghanistan is not one of repression and one where again Afghanistan becomes a staging ground for global attacks? So this is the moment for the world to come together. There are some things that it seems clear that we should do as an international community. And while sadly Canada did not succeed in getting that seat on the Security Council, we know that the Security Council is meeting today on an emergency basis. What we would like to see emerge from that meeting is a recognition that there should be no diplomatic recognition of the Taliban government, certainly not until there are verifiable confirmations that they will respect the laws of war and that they will respect fundamental human rights, two things that seem near impossible at this point to imagine that they might do, and certainly has not been demonstrated in any of their actions to date. We also cannot abandon those who tied themselves and had ties to the coalition that went into Afghanistan. We cannot abandon those who helped us, the personnel who helped us and aided our efforts when they were in Afghanistan. And there are many of those people who have been left behind, many of those people where there is absolutely no plan for them. So we believe that it is legally possible for Parliament to be recalled, even though it has been dissolved. We believe that there is a precedent that we can refer to in Section 46.3 of the Emergencies Act. And we would ask the Governor General to reconvene Parliament so that there can be an emergency debate. Because there needs to be a plan, and there needs to be accountability, and there needs to be an assurance that we will offer as much protection as we can to those who are left behind. On a personal note, our family has been very preoccupied. My husband was a technical advisor to the peace negotiations in Afghanistan. He has many colleagues who have been working very hard towards peace in Afghanistan for many years. Some who have gone into hiding, some who have had to flee the country, and others who are trapped because the commercial flights have closed, and because it is now approaching near impossible to leave the country. And so I'm thinking of those people. We are thinking of, my husband is thinking of his colleagues, and we are thinking of how we can come together and do what we can as people here in Canada to protect and support the people of Afghanistan in this incredibly difficult time. Alors, nous voulons demander au gouverneur général de reconvoquer le Parlement pour avoir un débat d'urgence sur la situation en Afghanistan. On sait que le Taliban, il y a à peu près 2 semaines, ils ont commencé de reprendre le pays d'Afghanistan. Ils ont réussi en ce moment de reprendre toutes les villes majeures en Afghanistan, et y compris le capital d'Afghanistan. C'était notre engagement militaire en Afghanistan était un engagement très important dans l'histoire du Canada. On a eu 40 000 personnels militaires en Afghanistan. On a perdu la vie de 159 soldats en Afghanistan. Et nous avons promis les femmes et les filles en Afghanistan que nous allons les protéger. Nous avons promis à tous les Afghans qui ont participé dans notre effort pour créer la démocratie dans le pays et d'assurer les droits fondamentaux des femmes et des filles. Nous avons promis que nous serons là jusqu'au fin, jusqu'au but. Alors, ce n'est pas le moment pour les abandonner. Ce n'est pas le moment pour dire que le sacrifice de les milliers de nos soldats va être un sacrifice sans un objectif, sans réaliser notre objectif. Les Nations Unies sont en train de convoquer une réunion d'urgence pour débattre qu'est-ce que serait leur réponse. Notre parti croit que c'est le moment pour dire d'une voix claire, notre gouvernement et les autres gouvernements du monde, que nous n'allons pas reconnaître diplomatiquement le gouvernement du Taliban sans qu'il y a une possibilité d'être sûr qu'ils vont respecter les droits de guerre et respecter les droits fondamentaux aussi. Nous devons aussi considérer comment nous allons protéger les Afghans qui restent coincés et bloqués dans l'Afghanistan, parce que sinon il y aura une énorme perte de vie de les personnes que nous avons promis de protéger. Alors, on croit que le Parlement peut être convoqué pour un débat d'urgence. On croit qu'il y a un précédent pour le faire dans l'acte de ce qui concerne les urgences, the Emergencies Act. On croit qu'il y a le précédent. On croit que c'est le moment parce que nous sommes dans une situation d'urgence à l'étranger. We are in a foreign policy emergency, and this is exactly the situation where we believe it would be possible to recall Parliament. So moving on to what we intended to discuss today, you'll see behind me this extraordinary graphic. This is a map of Canada. I mentioned yesterday some numbers, which we'll be mentioning time and again. These are numbers that really drive home why we should not be in this election in the first place, because we have important business to manage right now and because our attention needs to be elsewhere. Here we will see 270. 270 is the number yesterday of forest fires that were raging in British Columbia. And then you can see forest fires that are occurring in many other provinces and many other regions across Canada. We normally have a forest fire season, but we have never seen one this bad. We have never seen one this intense, and we know that this is only going to get worse. Here we also see the little waves across the country, and this is where we are experiencing rising sea levels. We are experiencing rising sea levels all across Canada because climate change is real, climate change is here, and the impacts can already be felt across our coastlines. You will also see thermometers distributed across the country. These are to show where we have our urban islands, our urban heat islands. An urban heat island is an island, a microclimate of temperature where the temperature is significantly higher than it is in rural areas. And you will see that we have a number of those across the country. We are standing in an urban heat island. This is an area where you can see there is very little greenery. We are in the center of Toronto. We are in Toronto Centre, and the buildings and the pavement and the concrete absorb the heat, and then they release the heat. And we also know that there is a link between the affluence of a neighborhood and the likelihood that it is going to be one of these urban heat islands. The poorer the neighborhood, the more likely that it is going to be an urban heat island. And so we remember also the 570 that I mentioned yesterday. 570 were the number of residents of British Columbia that died who would not otherwise have died had it not been for the heat dome that settled on British Columbia at the end of June of this year. And we remember 49 degrees because 49 degrees is the maximum temperature that was reached in Lytton, Ontario. 49 degrees is the extreme example of the heat that has devastated the prairies and caused a drought. A drought that is on track to be the worst on the books in Canada, and certainly the worst that the prairies has ever seen. So the bad news is that we have locked in 1.5 degrees, that whatever we do now to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, that amount of climate change has arrived. We are going to arrive at 1.5 degrees Celsius, and there is no way that we can avoid that. What that means is that we can expect to see what has already started, which are intense and more frequent extreme weather events, our oceans deoxygenating, our oceans acidifying, our glaciers melting, and our sea levels rising. The question now becomes, how bad do we want it to get? How bad are we willing to let things get before we take the action that is necessary? The Green Party says we don't want it to get any worse. And the only way that we can ensure that it doesn't get worse is to respect what we have been told in the recent report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is that we need to take drastic action now in order to reduce, not to reduce, but to limit our greenhouse gas emissions so that we can limit our global warming. Concretely, what does that mean? First, let's keep some facts in mind. Canada has never hit one of its greenhouse gas emissions targets. In the 6 years of the current government, not one single target has been hit. Canada, year on year in the last 6 years, has seen greenhouse gas emissions rise. Year on year, every year for the past 6 years. Canada is one of the top 3 worst emitters of greenhouse gases in the world. In the world, Canada. And so this is the record of the last 6 years. And this is exactly what we cannot have more of. And while I know it is difficult for people to understand all of the technicalities of the climate emergency, understand this, that more of the same is a road to nowhere. That the path that we are on is a path that is going to lead us to more extreme weather events, more intense heat, more of what we are seeing on the map here today. And so we are going to be talking a lot about our green future and the climate in this election. And we are going to be talking concretely about how we get from here to there and how we can ensure a safe, sustainable future that ensures that Canada remains, not remains, but becomes a competitive green global economy. Today, just let me leave you with 3 concrete things that I think every person in Canada can wrap their head around. The Green Party of Canada does not support the construction of one single new pipeline in Canada. That means no Trans Mountain pipeline. That means no LNG pipeline. That means no LNG facility. We do not support one single new pipeline in Canada. The Green Party of Canada does not support fracking. Fracked gas is how we extract our natural gas. It is damaging, it releases methane, it is extremely damaging to our environment. We do not support any projects that rely on fracking gas. And the Green Party of Canada is opposed to any new oil exploration projects. We have to wind those down completely. Now, we say these things because in regard to all 3 of these things, we stand alone. We are the only party in Canada that has said clearly, no new pipeline projects, no oil and gas exploration, no fracking. The only party. And there is no way for Canada to do its fair share to reduce greenhouse gas emissions without doing these 3 things. So today, let's take that message home. If we want to avoid more of this, then we have got to do those 3 simple things as soon as possible. No new pipelines, no more fracking, and no more oil and gas exploration. Alors, le but d'aujourd'hui, c'est de démontrer que nous sommes dans une situation d'urgence, que la crise climatique est ici, que si on veut éviter le pire, il faut assurer qu'on limite le réchauffement planétaire. Il faut assurer qu'on fait nos mieux de réduire nos gaz à effet de serre d'une manière ambitieuse et dans le plus court délai possible. Comment est-ce que nous allons le faire? Nous allons le faire par assurer qu'on ne construit pas même un oléoduc au Canada. Il faut absolument annuler tous nos projets de construction des oléoducs au Canada. Il faut absolument abolissez totalement la fracturation hydraulique et les projets qui sont liés à la fracturation hydraulique. Et il faut absolument annuler tous les projets de forage, d'exploration. Ces 3 actes vont nous aider à faire notre part parce que le fait, c'est que notre gouvernement, ça fait 6 ans, n'a pas réussi à réduire les gaz à effet de serre, même par 1 degré. Nous sommes un des pires émetteurs de gaz à effet de serre au monde. Nous sommes un des pays, ce seul pays du G7 qui n'a pas réussi à réduire le gaz à effet de serre. Et on sait maintenant que l'impact est ici au Canada, que l'impact est historique ici au Canada. Alors, pour aujourd'hui, nous avons un message simple. C'est le message qu'on ne peut pas construire des oléoducs, on ne peut pas fracturer et on ne peut pas continuer à créer des projets d'exploration, de forage d'exploration. Et avec ça, nous allons continuer la conversation, mais je le laisse là ici pour aujourd'hui. Merci.
We'll now end today's live portion of the event. Now we're going to questions on the ground. First question today is from David Thurton from CBC News.
Hi, Madam Paul.
Hello, David.
Can you hear me? It's a very
Yes, I can.
You were very loud here.
Yes, I can.
I have a number of questions to ask you, but I'm just going to ask you first off about mandating vaccines. Should there be mandatory vaccines for public sector employees and other places of federal jurisdiction?
Thank you for the question. And this is a policy area that the Green Party is considering very seriously. First, we should say clearly and off the bat that vaccines save lives. And in the context of COVID-19, Vaccines have saved lives. Vaccines have helped us to reduce hospitalizations. Vaccines have helped us to reduce mortality. Vaccines have helped us to send less people to the ICU. And I know that everyone is grateful that we have had access to vaccines in Canada. I'm vaccinated. My entire family is vaccinated as well. So more than anything, our message to people in Canada is please get vaccinated. If you have not been vaccinated, please go and get vaccinated. There is certainly somewhere nearby to you that can get you a vaccine, probably today. Sorry, I'm in an urban center, so to be fair, there are parts of the country where it might be a little more difficult, but please get vaccinated. It's a matter of public health. With respect to vaccinations of public servants, federal public servants, I'm interested in knowing the details of the government's plan. We know that there are those who are not able to get vaccinated for legitimate reasons. We know that there are those who are hesitant to get vaccinated. We know that there are whole communities of people who have had very difficult and painful contacts with the healthcare system that are still living the legacies of difficult contacts with Canada's healthcare system and that are worried. What is the plan to educate those people? What is the plan to allay their concerns? And have we explained to those who, for whatever reason, do not want to get vaccinated, but certainly those who have religious or cultural or other reasons, what reasonable accommodations we are going to make for them? So that is, the devil is always in the details, and we know that this announcement was just thrown out there with a deadline for after the elections, which of course is not a mistake at all, without answering any of those questions. And so those are the policy questions; those are the public health questions that should be answered.
It sounds like you do not support what the government is calling for because you don't see enough of the details. And if I'm right on that, can you just tell me what sort of details do you need to see in that plan for you to support mandatory vaccines for federal government employees and other places of federal jurisdiction?
It's an excellent question, and that's exactly it. What is the plan? What is the plan? It is not enough, and it's certainly not responsible to just say, this is going to be mandatory. What are the details? Are there going to be exceptions to that? And if there are, what will they be? And how will we ensure that those employees are able to go to work safely and that they are not putting their colleagues at any risk? How are we going to explain to communities, which we know throughout this pandemic, which we have recognized, which our immunization panel has recognized, have hesitations because of cultural reasons, because of a legacy related to terrible interactions with the healthcare system? How are we going to explain to them why this is important, why this is a public health, why this is important for the protection of themselves and their communities? It's important whenever we are talking about big public policy issues and considerations that we do it in a careful way and that we do it in a way where the details are shared with everyone. We should not be politicizing this at all. We absolutely should not be. We should not be approaching this as an election issue. We should be approaching this as a public health issue, and we should only be thinking about what is in the best interest of people in Canada.
Thank you so much. That concludes our questions from the ground for now. We're now going to our digital questions online with Rosie Emery, our press secretary for the Green Party Canada.
Yes, hi, thank you, Victoria. So we have a question from Alex Malingall from the Toronto Star. If anybody else would like to ask a question, please use the raised hand feature and we will come to you next. Si quelqu'un voulait demander une question, s'il vous plaît, utilisez le lever la main, puis on va revenir à vous. So go ahead, Alex, one question, one follow-up.
Yeah, hi, thanks can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yes, awesome. I was going to ask first of all about the drama in the party, but maybe I just wanted to clarify about this call you're making to recall Parliament. You referenced Section 46.3 of the Emergencies Act. You referenced a precedent I just tweeted out what you'd said, and some constitutional experts were questioning the validity of, or the possibility of doing something like this. What precedent are you talking about, and what does that section of the act say? How do you think it would be possible to recall a dissolved parliament during an election?
So what I've said is that, so the question that I've just received is about recalling parliament. And I believe that this is legally possible. I also have spent this morning, I woke up thinking, what can we do? We called an election yesterday. When I say we, let me disassociate myself with that. I did not call an election. The Prime Minister chose to call an election yesterday, knowing that the Taliban was marching on Kabul, knowing that the capital was about to fall, and knowing that we had left behind not only the people who had tied themselves to Canada, not only those who had helped us in good faith when we promised to take care of them and their families should the worst happen, but also the 14 million women and girls that we know were going to be left to a terrible fate because we had seen what rule under the Taliban had been like for them. So that is what I woke up thinking about what can we do? Parliament has been dissolved in the midst of this foreign policy crisis. And so I've asked that question, and as my understanding is that it is legally possible and that we can take some guidance. This is not, again, the section to rely on, but it gives us an indication of the kind of circumstances under which Parliament could be recalled. And so I believe that this is one of those. I believe that the Governor General could seek to convene Parliament to have this emergency debate, precisely because this is a foreign policy emergency, and it is the kind of exceptional circumstances under which one would be seeking to recall Parliament. Let's keep in mind, Alex, that today the United Nations Security Council is having an emergency debate on Afghanistan and on the international response to Afghanistan. The UK Parliament, another member of the coalition, along with ourselves and the United States, recalled their parliament for an emergency debate. And so surely we are not going to sit here in Canada because the Prime Minister has called this ill-advised election in the midst of many different kinds of crises and say our hands are washed. There's nothing that we can do. We are abandoning people to their fates because we have dissolved Parliament. I believe that this is legally possible, and I certainly would encourage our constitutional experts and our government to put their minds to how we can make this happen.
Okay, thanks for that. And just as a follow-up, I'm hoping you discuss, yesterday you were saying that you plan to spend the bulk of the campaign in Toronto Centre. The latest information I have is there's no national campaign director for the Green Party. I don't know if there's enough money. There was a presentation a few weeks ago where they said that the party's near a financial tipping point. There was questions about whether it would receive a bank loan for the coming campaign. So I'm hoping you can tell us, as the leader of this party, do you guys have enough money to run a national campaign? Are you working with party headquarters to run a national campaign? Is it still true that there's nobody in charge, no national campaign chair? If so, who's running the campaign? What's the deal with the national campaign?
So the situation, so the question, sorry for the cameras that are here, it's about the national campaign and the situation with it. The Green Party of Canada, and I knew this when I signed up, and we all did as Greens when we signed up for the Green Party of Canada, is a relatively young party. It is a startup party. Every seat that we win, we have to work hard to win, and that includes mine. I never had any interest in cannibalizing the seats in our party or taking a seat from one of our sitting MPs. I'm here to grow our party and to grow it in places in the country that I believe are going to be responsive to our message, and that includes here in Toronto Centre, and it includes Ontario. What that means realistically, and it was the case when Elizabeth ran for her seat as well, is that I need to spend a significant amount of time in the riding to persuade the voters in this riding that I am the right representative for them. The thing about Toronto Centre is that the policies and the positions that the Green Party wants to spend the most time talking about in this election all can be talked about here, and it's another reason I chose to run here. This is an urban heat island. This is a place that experiences extreme heat on the hot days, exactly because of what we have done to our environment. We are able to talk about the climate here. We are able to talk about the need for social policies and completing our social safety net, exactly because of the issues in this community. And so I'm going to be talking about national issues that are going to inform our national campaign. I'm able to do it from here, and the reality of being a Green is that I will mostly need to do it from here. In the meantime, our party has always been powered primarily by our volunteers and by our members. We know how to run a campaign under any set of circumstances, even the outrageous circumstances of running a campaign during a fourth wave of pandemic. And so we expect that voters are going to have a strong Green option to vote for across the country, and that by the time the campaign is over, they will know what their choices are, they will know what we are offering them, and they are going to, we believe, be ready to vote to elect Green MPs in their area.
Thank
And
you,
a follow-up
Alex.
from David Thurton from CBC News.
Hi again, David Thurton,
Hi there.
CBC News. I just have to come back to the bit of news that you're making. You're calling for the recall of Parliament to debate what's happening in Afghanistan. Under what circumstance can that be done? You know, I'm not a constitutional expert. Being a member of the Parliamentary Press Gallery, you kind of are an amateur expert, though. And I don't know. I don't think there are grounds to recall Parliament once it's been dissolved, as it has been by the Governor General during an election. So what are the grounds that you would recall Parliament? Has this ever been done before in any Westminster democracy? I mean, can you just explain that? Like, how is that happening?
Absolutely. And again, you're absolutely right. When I woke up this morning, and actually I think the first media release that we sent out earlier today, I was lamenting the fact that we were not going to be able to debate this in Parliament because it had not, because we would not be able to recall it. But it seems that there is a way to do it, that it is legally possible to do it, and that we can look toward the precedent of the that section 46.3 of the Emergencies Act. I'm continuing to, I mean, even as I was sitting here waiting for our press conference to start, I was and our team has been reaching out to constitutional experts to see exactly how it could be done. But we believe that we should be able to ask the Governor General to reconvene Parliament for this emergency debate, exactly because it is a foreign policy emergency akin to the kind of emergencies that are described under Section 46 of the Emergencies Act, because of Canada's deep engagement in Afghanistan. As I said, the 40,000 military personnel that were committed there, the thousands that were injured, and also the many, many people that have been left behind. This is a question of global security. It's a question of national security. It's a foreign policy emergency. And even with a dissolution of Parliament, we believe that it should be and is legally possible to reconvene it in these exceptional circumstances in order to speak about, not just to speak, not just to debate, but also to hold the government to account for what is not being done in Afghanistan, to ensure that we are not abandoning the 14 million women and girls that we promised to protect to their fate, to ensure that Canada has a credible, doable plan to extract all of the people who are tied to our coalition and all of the people who are helpers, and to ensure that to the greatest degree possible that Afghanistan does not revert back to the dark days, and that it does not become a future staging ground for global attacks, and it does not become a major global threat. So we're going to continue to investigate this. We'll be happy to refer the media to the experts that we've been consulting, and we are going to see if there is any way possible to do this, because if there were ever circumstances to do it, it is certainly these ones. We are not prepared to abandon Afghanistan certainly not without exploring every single option that we have to do something in this incredibly dire situation.
And just as a follow-up, real quick, Madam Paul, you recall Parliament, you have this emergency debate, and then what happens?
Well, then I hope that the result of it is that there are concrete actions that are take place. Government has not stopped functioning. We are in a situation that was foreseeable, that was avoidable, but that we did not prepare for. The Taliban has overrun Afghanistan in an exceptionally short period of time. The US has not even fully withdrawn from Afghanistan, and yet we have the Taliban in Kabul and in all the major cities. We did not, as far as we know, Canada did not have a plan for extracting all of our helpers, all of those who have ties to the coalition from Afghanistan. Canada and the coalition did not have a plan for the 14 million women and girls who have been left behind, or for the human rights defenders who have been working hand in hand with the coalition to help bring democracy and the rule of law and respect for fundamental human rights. So we need a plan now. We need a plan in coordination with the international community about what we will do. As I said, one thing that the Prime Minister should say today, if he hasn't already, I don't believe that he has, is that Canada will offer no diplomatic recognition whatsoever to the Taliban until there are verifiable means of ensuring that it will respect the laws of war and that it will respect the fundamental rights of its population. Canada should be ensuring, right now, our government should be ensuring that all of the members of the coalition agree to this, and that all of the members of the coalition are working in lockstep to ensure that everyone that should be extracted is, but beyond that, that the Afghans who are left behind and need to stay behind for one reason or another have the maximum protection that we can afford to them.
Thank you so much. This brings us to our final question from Alex Ballingall from Toronto Star. Alex?
Hi, sorry, the connection's getting garbled there, but can you hear me okay?
Perfectly. Alex, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. There seems to be a connectivity issue. Okay, sorry. Okay. All right, I think that's it. I think we lost our question from the Star, but Alex, if you can hear me, you can give us a call. Happy to answer your question. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
This ends today's press conference with Green Party Leader Annamie Paul. Ceci met fin à la conférence de presse d'aujourd'hui avec la chef du Parti Vert. Merci pour venir. Thank you for joining us.